Hi, and welcome to my studio. This is my pastel painting of an eastern bluebird, and in today's demonstration I will show you how to render these soft downy feathers on the bird's chest. So please follow along as I demonstrate some tips and techniques I use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to this demonstration on painting fluffy soft feathers on this eastern bluebird. I need to establish most of the background before working on the details of the bluebird. His soft feathers will extend into the background, so I need to have the background mostly completed first. I am working on Uart 600 grade sanded paper for this demonstration, and I'm referencing a photograph from the Pixabay website. I'm using several shades of green for my background, and you can see the sample colors here on my paper towel. It's not important to match the colors exactly, but I'm using Stabilo NuPastels for the background because they are a medium hard pastel, and they don't fill up the tooth of the paper too quickly as I blend. You can see that this paper will hold several layers of pastel, and I can now begin blending with my fingers a little bit as the surface is now smoother. I will list the supplies I'm using in the description area below, and I will also include links to where I purchased some of my supplies. Now that I've blocked in some of the background, I can begin working on the bluebird. I'm starting with my black pastel pencil to establish some of the darkest values in the bird's face, beak, and eye area. As I reference my photo, I'm drawing in the darkest feathers and shadows in his face and neckline. I want these dark shadows and lines to remain visible, so I will switch to some rubbing alcohol and a small brush to go over these lines and solidify them into my paper. I also have a rubber-tipped blending stick that also helps push color into the grain of the paper. It will take several layers of color to build up the saturation of the bird's feathers. I'm starting with a light blue pastel, and I'm blending it into the paper with a paper stump. I'm beginning to build my colors with this light blue pastel. I've switched to my ultramarine blue, and I am going over the areas where I had established the dark outlines in the bird's face and neck. I'll blend these colors a little bit with my paper stump. I am reestablishing the dark shadows around the bird's eye, and I'm switching to a very dark blue to intensify the shading more dramatically. The dark shading will bring out the shape of the bird's face and will give it some depth and dimension. I have switched to my black pastel pencil to intensify the outline around the bird's eye and to increase the saturation of the dark color in the bird's pupil. I have intensified the dark feathers around the bird's eye, and I use a rubber-tipped blending stick to push the color and blend it into the paper. The light is reflecting off the surface level of the bird's feathers, so I've added some light blue to the contour of the bird's face and head. I have switched to a light amber pastel for the colors on his chest feathers. I will switch to my sponge applicator to blend this color into the base of the paper. You can see that the dark shadows in the bird's chest are still visible and did not blend out of the paper when I used the sponge applicator. I am using my burnt sienna, which is a reddish brown, kind of rusty color, for the darkest areas of the chest feathers. There are hints of dark blue shadows being cast in his chest, and I will use my navy blue for that and apply a little bit more of the burnt sienna and blend these colors together. I'm going to draw the shape of the bird's wing. I'm using my ultramarine blue, and I've switched to a light blue at the top of the wing where the light is reflecting most. I'll continue to contour the shape of the bird's chest feathers with my darker shade of blue. My goal is to achieve a very soft, fluffy blend of feathers on the bird's chest. It will still require several applications of pastel to achieve that. I'm switching to a light blue pastel for the bird's belly feathers. I will use white as the final layer. Now I've switched to a gray pastel to shade the underbelly of the bird's chest. This sponge applicator tool works very nicely in small and tight areas of your painting. So now I'd like to build the chest feathers on the bird to begin creating a fluffy, full chest of feathers. I will need to intensify the lights and the darks to give that illusion of fullness. I will be using the paper stump to blend these colors together to create that fluffy texture. I'm using a golden yellow to create some of the top feathers that have been puffed out in the bird's chest. And I will use my burnt sienna to add some shape and contour to the bird's chest. As I blend here, you can see how soft the texture is becoming. I've switched to a dark brown to shade the area on the side of the bird, and I'll blend this a little bit. The sunlight is shining on the peaks of these small feathers, and the yellow golden color is a perfect match for these small feathers. I'll add a few peaks of feathers in the cadmium orange color using my pastel stick along the neckline of the bird. Now that the chest feathers has some volume, I'm switching back to my dark blue to add a little more shading to the head feathers and some of the shadows in the bird's chest. I'm switching to a light purple to add some shading to the neckline. Complementary colors can bring more interest to a painting. I'd like to finish up the details in the bird's head and wing area. I am intensifying some of the shadows still being cast on the bird's feathers, and I want to bring out the highlights and light colors that are highlighted around the bird's eye. As I add more layers of color, I'm continually intensifying the darker values in the bird's head. I've switched to a very light orange, and this is part of the General's hard pastels that I'm using to do this. They're very nice to sharpen, and I can get a good point when adding highlights to my painting. I'm also switching to a white pastel pencil to add some individual little feathers to the side of the bird's belly. I'll switch to my light blue to add some more shading to the underside of the bird's belly. I'll add a very light peachy color to the underside of the bird's feathers, and then I'll do some more blending with my paper stump. I'm switching to my white pastel to add some individual feather texture to his belly. The white feathers are becoming very fluffy and soft in appearance, and I'm blending it lightly to keep that soft texture. I'm going to add a light blue highlight to the bird's beak, and I'm going to touch up the green background behind the bluebird. I'm going to add some dark shadows beneath some of the small feathers in his head and wing area. This helps separate some of the feathers in the wing area. I'm going to add a little more shape to the bird's beak using my gray pastel. His feathers have a very nice fluffy look to them, so I'm going to develop his legs and feet. I'm using my black pastel with a very sharp point to draw in the legs and his little talons. I'll primarily use the black and white for his legs and feet, and after I begin to shade with some of the white areas in the high points of his bumpy little feet, I'll blend it with my paper stump, and this will give it a appearance of gray and black versus white. The bluebird's sitting on a old weathered piece of wood, but it has some unique textures and colors. So I'm going to use my dark black pastel pencil to draw in some of the darkest crevices and textures in the wood. I'll add some shades of beige and browns and also some gray to give it a unique finish to the bark of the tree. Now I can add some more shape to the bird's underside. It needs a little more shadows beneath him to create some separation between the wood he's sitting on and his body. I'll add a few more details to the wood and some highlights, and this painting is nearly complete. Now that the wood is completed and shaded, I can come back and complete the background. I'll use my light lime green, olive green, and a darker shade of green to complete and blend the background. So this completes my demonstration on how to render soft, fluffy, downy feathers on this eastern bluebird. I hope you have enjoyed this video, and I look forward to sharing more demonstrations with you in the near future. Please press like and subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you.